Thanks for joining us today. Here today, I'm with Daniele Fontani, and we're going to be covering some really interesting topics and maybe a little bit controversial topics around DevOps and NoOps, how things are moving, and how we move more and more towards an open source and how that can accelerate your career and as well as your business. And last but not least, as part of the topics, we're going to be talking a little bit about digital transformation and the impact that this is having on companies. Before we start, maybe Danielle, would be great if you can introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Bruno, for inviting me here today. It's very nice to be here with you. I'm Daniele Fontani, as you told, and I work as CTO in a medium big web agency in Italy, and I work as DevOps engineering and as digital transformation expert in the last years for many kind of companies, since the smallest one and also for corporations. So this give me the power of knowing what the customer needs really, and all the kind of customers. So basing on the budget, basing on the really needs. So this make me in a very good position for giving advices about DevOps and other digital transformation trend.
Nice, that's awesome, and I think that's a pretty good segue, having the opportunity to understand what customers are doing, what they need. And I've read a few of your blogs around NoOps.
Sure.
This is a controversial topic because I think when you talk about NoOps, some of the DevOps folks they get kind of scared on what am I gonna do in the near future. So I think how do you see NoOps and DevOps and the evolution, and why do you think people are going to be moving towards NoOps in the near future?
NoOps is a very dangerous word. You are to be careful to speak with some DevOps engineering or some system administrator and tell NoOps, because it scares. Mm-hmm. It scares. But when I hear that word the first time, the first reaction was, this is a provocation. This is a provocation. We cannot remove this kind of effort for our system. But then 1 minute after, I thought, well, it would be great, maybe not to remove, but to reduce the effort, the manual effort on the process on our side. Because we had made a big step forward when we take operation and developers and we put together in a concept called DevOps. Well, this was a great step forward because we removed the friction, part of the friction. We started to define how things should be done. And this was a great help for digital transformation and for accelerating the software development. But this is not an out, because under this concept, there are always people, there are always processes. So at the end, there is more transparency. There are tools that automate things, but you still have to do things. Mm-hmm. So what is the next level? What is the next step forward? We are moving on. It's time to create an environment where the development experience is seamless. So you don't have to experience any friction on the releasing or the development part. Each developer must be able to play the same of the production environment on their local PC and must be able to understand what will happen, what the code of your local machine will do on test, production, and so on. Mm-hmm. So thinking to NoOps in that way, not to a provocative way, but just an evolution where we are trying to reduce the human effort. We are trying to automate as much as possible. Of course, there are things that cannot be removed. Mm-hmm. We cannot avoid monitoring and security. This is not possible to be removed. When I wrote an article about DevOps, and most of the scared people that reply to that tell, and what about monitoring? And what about security? And when the hacker will break down your website the day after you will be online.
Mhm.
Well, I think that this is the wrong approach. The good approach is keep the security team and bring it into DevOps. Okay, this is another buzzword.
Yeah.
Maybe DevSecOps, okay, but it's
Right.
still the same things. Everybody inside the development process. Everybody have to be aware of what's happening in the company. So we don't have to be a silo at the company where each department watch the other. Is the other fault? No, when a software doesn't work, is a shared responsibility of all the pillars of the company. So we had to be aware of that, and we have to be introduced in the process. So I think that NoOps is more than that. It's also the ability of keeping all the, thanks to automation, thanks to opportunity of thinking of a process that is transparent, that is driven by the code, that is visible. Because remember, the source code is the better things that there is in the world, because it's replicable, can be read, can be shared, can be copied. So if you have inside your source code all the definition, all the things that you need to understand what the code will do, also the infrastructure part, also the server part, and so on, you will be safe because everybody know what is the problem. It's easier to understand. Of course, there is a little friction to be removed, and it is the on-premise approach to the work of the people, because all of that work well if you are using some cloud services or some provider that help to remove all the friction with the operative part. Because if you abstract everything, but then you have to pay for people that monitor and maintain all the infrastructure, you have done nothing. You've done nothing. So cloud is a driver. Cloud is an accelerator. Cloud is an enabler for NoOps, for DevOps itself, and to accelerate the digital transformation at all, for sure.
Makes sense. And what are your thoughts when, even if I'm using cloud as a user, for example, what are your thoughts around kind of microservices, Kubernetes? Do you see those as enablers, or do you see those as kind of challenges that you still have to go through? And the reason why I ask is because there's some kind of love and hate relationship to some extent, where ops people, they really like Kubernetes. It's complex. It keeps the DevOps people in control. But on the dev side, it kind of blurred the line between their application code and infrastructure related code. So do you think microservices and Kubernetes is moving towards that NoOps vision that you have, or do you think this is more of a challenge instead?
For me, really, there is really some hate about Kubernetes, because it seems to be too much old style, because you have to see in deep what happened inside. But thinking really to Kubernetes, if I see, I want to forget about server nodes and taints and all the technical detail behind Kubernetes. But if I see Kubernetes as a developer, I see YAML files, configuration files, like Docker files, or probably on any other kind of configuration. So even in this case, you can think about Kubernetes as something that is probably is not serverless, but it's a good solution for the NoOps solution, because you can control what happened on the other part of on the server side just by writing YAML file. Then you can use traditional automation on CI/CD pipeline, or you can use cloud system, or you can use accelerator, or things that make things easier. Of course, this depends basically on the sizing. Probably if you have a very simple, a small application, there are many solutions. I just want to mention Shipa, that is very good, because you just have to write a YAML file, and everything is super simple. So you have to forget about everything is behind. But what happens if all the complexity of Kubernetes is needed, because sometimes it's needed, and at that time you can just write your own file. So Kubernetes is good because it's the solution that work for a wide range of situation, from the simple to the complex one. And it also allow you to make some economics, because if you have an infrastructure, you can host multiple containers. So you pay what you use, and it is quite controllable as cost. So it is a good solution. Of course, has a lot of benefits from the whole style on-premise approach that gives you a lot of control, but has also some problems of the old style system, because this control need to be understood and so on. Anyway, if you buy just a very bad word, but if you buy just from a provider Kubernetes, like it was a pair of shoes, well, you take Kubernetes and you don't have to worry about how the cluster is configured. You just have to click add node, and give some policy, and it's very easy. It's very easy. But think also about DevOps engineer. DevOps engineering is very beautiful work, but think about when you have thousands of different services or different provider. So it's also hard to maintain. A lot of companies are implementing a multi-cloud strategy. Yeah. So you can have many different providers that sells different services with different characteristics. So keeping the different provider in the same time is costly. But if you use Kubernetes is the same, quite the same on all the systems. So it's reduced the friction. So it's easier to implement a multi-cloud strategy if you are on Kubernetes. It's easy to shift from the on-premise or to the cloud and vice versa, because it's the same. It's Kubernetes. So I think Kubernetes is a very good solution. Is maybe a compromise solution between the cloud, between the on-premise. So I think this is the one of the reason because of the success of Kubernetes, because it is now the first way for deploy containers in the world, probably. So there will be a region, and probably the region is the wide range of use case that they can support.
So you think that if you get, for example, a Kubernetes from a managed provider, from a cloud provider, do you think it can be an enabler towards the NoOps type of approach, or what are your thoughts there?
Sure. I think yes, is a way for enable it, because it keeps things easy.
And the more we go towards the NoOps model, how does the role of the DevOps or the sysadmins, how does it change over time in your opinion?
I think for DevOps, I think DevOps will need more and more to dirty hands by playing with source code, probably, because they will start working more on the local PC and try to adjust, probably define the right Docker file, defining the YAML file, make configuration management. I think configuration management is a new role, relatively new role, but they are spreading because we have the need to have a people that just manage configuration.
Right.
It is clear that all the other is moved, probably. A lot of the work of operative work for creating server and so on are automated. So you have just to play with configuration, to enter password in the vault and things like that. So probably DevOps will have to go near to developer and be supported by the cloud. So he will have a more architectural role, defining which services which help those, because in complicated scenarios, probably Kubernetes is not enough. You cannot just solve the problem by deploying pods. Probably you will need to buy a database as a service with some specific performance. You may have some issues with the throughput and so on. So it's not just deploying, creating application nowadays is not just activate containers and so on. The problem probably will be for the old operation, for who was adding cable to the server. Such kind of worker, of course, will find less employment because you need in your your private data center. I don't know if I were a businessman, I don't know if I will invest on a private data center today. It's very hard to find a situation like that. And there are many very big providers that are probably 90% of the server in the world, but with a limited effort because they are very good for optimizing everything. So that kind of worker, or he will specialize to be one of the best in the work and enter the public cloud market or the cloud market as for generating mega services or like that, or they have to move to the DevOps side and dirty hands with code. This is not easy. I come from a I started working as a developer, so for me it's natural play with code, but it's not so natural for all the operation guys. It's like when I started in some part of my career, starting playing with terminal, it wasn't so natural to move from source code to the terminal and running command and see what happened. It's very different. Sometimes in the virtual machine, you didn't have the possibility of Control Z or just revert to the original situation. It's not Git based. Server are not Git based. So I felt some difficult. So I think there will be a big change on the market for that people.
Yeah, I agree that moving towards that vision will force folks to be more of an architect, and also, at least the way I see is, it will shift a little bit of the role to be more of a governance person than just an operational person per se. Like I said, all the configuration will probably be stored as code and so on, but it will be up to the platform team or DevOps team to actually know where things are being deployed, how they're being deployed, how they're consuming resources and security and so on. So it becomes a good chunk of it becomes part of a governance as well, kind of a governance role in the organization.
Sure. And you remember me another buzzword, the FinOps.
Oh, yeah.
The financial operation. So there is another proof about how the world is changing. The fact that we need a people that watch report for understand where are you spending, for saving, for predicting cost, and so on. And make that if you sell your product on 10 euro, you have to spend less than 10 euro on server, because otherwise that is not profitable, no more profitable. So the fact that you need a people in the big organization to make this work, to play with, because it's not this is also not a simple role, because you have to know what we are looking, because usually report from the public vendor are very clear, but are hard to be read for an administrative guy. So you have to know something about IT, something about financial. You have to mix data together and predict. It's not so easy, but I think that it can make the difference, because you may save a lot of money in investing in the right services.
And I completely agree. And I think this will be a joint work between the infrastructure operations team and the financial team, because seeing the report from a financial perspective is great, but I think for you to do that effectively, you have to be able to match how these resources that are giving you $1,000 in cost are actually being consumed, or maybe they are not being consumed. And how do you build an operational model that can auto adjust based on the real consumption that your application needs, right?
Clear. And is less or more the same that happened between the dev and operation. I think all this proof tell us that in the future we will have to work more together as a team and with shared goals than as individual, as silos. And this is how, in my opinion, and in opinion of most of digital transformation specialists, the companies have to go. So to shared goal, shared vision, and try to avoid silos, or when you have to, because silos are necessary, as probably a necessary evil. When there are silos in your company, try to glue everything with culture and make that everything is happy to work with the colleagues and make the best for the community, not just for itself.
Makes sense, and I think that's a good kind of bridge to the next topic, because a lot of the tools that we have been talking about around microservices, Kubernetes, and even a lot of the tools that are starting to target the FinOps space, they are open source tools, right? So, and that has been driving a lot of the evolution around these topics. So, how are your what are your thoughts around kind of open source for me as a DevOps person, for example, or an engineer, and open source as a career for me and for my business as well?
Sure. Sure. Just if you see what kind of tool we named, like Kubernetes or Docker, and most of them are open source. What is the role of open source in our life? I think that we cannot just take from the community without giving something back. No? This make contributing on the open source, each one for his capabilities, is an ethical way for making all these sustainable. Because we cannot just think that some people are working for free for contributing to some tool, and just you have to take. And so on an ethical plan, of course, contributing on open source is ethical and is useful for keeping all the world running on this stream. But I want to focus more on the opportunities that you have as DevOps developer on contributing about open source. And I want just to do that by telling my history. I started working on open source in 2006. So, and probably the middle age of informatics science, probably. And it's a lot of time ago. At the time, I started playing open source, and I created desktop application made it in C#. So Microsoft and open source together in the same project. It was very, very, very strange for the time, but now no. But at the time was very strange. And I was 19. I created this application. I think it made some 100,000 downloads. It was a very huge number for the time, and I learned how to program, how to do good programs. It was a very good experience for me. I didn't take any money, neither €1 or $1, neither. But what I learned with this experience, I had the possibility to test, to explore new capabilities, to deliver some project by myself. So it was a very great experience. And I think that this experience and the open source experience, the community that I grow and so on, tell me a lot of more that a simple employee can tell me, just telling me do this software and so on. So I never stop, and I continued working on open source project, and everything I do on my spare time is open source, related to open source. My article is correlated with open source code, because I think that is a way for giving something back to the community, is a way for accelerating my growth, because it forced me to do not just source code, but the best source code I can do for engaging people and for keeping high standard, because everybody see what I wrote. So if you go to my GitHub account and I see something bad, I think you think you are not a good person, of course. So I'm pushed to do my best for keeping a quality standard, and it is challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why probably for each programmer, for each DevOps, giving some small, even small contribution is useful for keep updated and find some challenge. Probably a lot of developers, a lot of DevOps engineering every day start 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, well, depending on the location, on the culture. Then for 8 hours stay on the task, just solve problem and think, when you find time for keep updated, for make training. Of course, letting driven by the community for having experience is a good solution. And finally, if you have some companies that are selling some technology product or not technology product, the open source is a good way for engaging the community, because if you open something, people opens to you, so you can create easily a community, have some tester, have some group of, in fact, the open source developer that work in some technology are evangelists for the product, so evangelists for the company. Is a very good synergy, because if you are a company, and we can see that all the bigger brand are moving to the open source trend. If you are a company, you have some advantages. If you are a developer, you have the advantages of keep updated and be part of the community and let the community drive you to the success. And for the final user, you can get product for free or with low price. So I think the open source is a win-win approach, and thanks to this solution that has no barrier, you can lot of company can play DevOps, can play can have digital solution and so on. So I really think that open source is one of the drivers that let the digital community grow so much in the last years.
It makes sense. And one of the things that I see quite a bit is folks that want to start getting involved with open source, right? And especially around the kind of microservices space and so on, you have those huge projects, Docker, Kubernetes, Istio. Those projects are super big, and many times I see folks getting lost on how to get started. So do you have any advice for people who are just kind of getting their feet wet, but the project is too big, the community is big? How do they get engaged?
Sure. The first question is about what is your goal? Because of course, starting contributing on a huge project like Kubernetes can be done, but you have to be very, very competent on deep for be able to contribute, or for be able to find a bug and then fix it. We can do it step by step, or maybe by starting from a small project. There are a lot of small projects on GitHub or on internet that needs help. So you may start with small project and be useful, or maybe just writing a help page. How many times as developer we find some documentation that is not updated or is not good enough? How many times we see this documentation is not good, and then we try the solution, but we didn't commit it. We rarely go to the vendor or go to the GitHub page and just try to fix the documentation issue. We never do that. We should start to do that, because you are not alone in the internet that is reading documentation. So probably fixing it, you will save life to a lot of developers. Even half hour for thousands of developers is a very, very contribution for the community, for the developer community.
Makes sense. And there is also the other side of the story, right? Which is the business side that is opening up a project. Many folks, they have the impression that if you just go to GitHub and change your repo to public, then lots of people are going to start engaging, which is not exactly like that. So what is your advice on kind of, okay, you open up your source code. how do you build a community, and how do you reach out to people who are interested in open source projects and contributing and so on?
This is quite hard.
Mm-hmm.
This is quite hard because if you are a company, a big company, you have budget to do that. So you have budget for telling you are also a lot of employers. So probably if you have thousands of employers and you tell the employers to join the community, someone will join. Otherwise, for the regular people like me, I try to create many communities. The first question is the idea and the problem you solve. So you for sure have to reach a point when you have a tool that works and can solve the problem of someone. Then at that point, when you have this MVP or POC that is working and solves some problem, what you have to do is to promote it using blog articles and social network or the forum, or just suggest it as solution in Stack Overflow or something like that. And then when people will start to use it, you may let the community grow, and you can try to involve maybe people will start opening issues, so you can ask to contribute. So it's not so easy. You cannot pay. You are not paying people, so you can solve this problem just by making a PPC campaign on Facebook or Google. So you have to build the community. If you are a big company, you can make events. You can invite people to events. You can send your speaker to meetups and so on. For a product, people is a little bit hard because you have to start from something that works as innovative, and then you have to promote this solution by yourself. But
it makes sense. It makes sense. And on one of the topics that you mentioned, and it is a topic that we wanted to cover, is the digital transformation, right? DevOps and NoOps may be a part of it. Open source may be leveraged as a tool to get there. But what are you seeing around, because digital transformation is a big word. And many companies, they start and it's a long journey. So what are your thoughts, and what are you seeing around digital transformation and cloud native and so on?
Even in this case, I had the opportunity of working with a lot of customers that have different perspective. And what I see is usually the bigger problem is not about tools or digital solution, but is about culture. Is about the human part of digital transformation. So big companies are reluctant to the change as usual. A small company often has no vision or cannot realize what will be the future. So probably the first, if I were a businessman, if you hold a company, the first things I will start working on it is on the cultural level, just to explain to my employer why it's important to be digital, why it's important to sell online. Just I make this example. Think about a toothbrush. Probably you think about this as a commodity, because there are thousands of producers, thousands of consumers. You just go to the market, this or those is the same, and that make that you can sell this product, the toothbrush, to I think in Italy here €1, €1, $1. Probably in the USA will be more or less the same. So probably few margin and a lot of expensive on marketing and so on. Because this product is no more digital. But what if you will start adding a service to the toothbrush? If you sell together with the toothbrush, the dentist, maybe you will have a service. You will have a service, so you can start having something different from your competitor. So you can make some different that doesn't force you to produce thousands of tons of toothbrush but maybe you can just do the same, just selling a service related to the product. So you will start selling something that is in part digital and in part physical. So and this is just an example to tell that sometimes the things are not how we image. So we can with some cultural with a different cultural approach, you can start by seeing things from a different perspective, and you can start to embrace digital transformation. That is not only a question of tool. You can change the ERP, you can change the CRM, you can change the commerce, you can do all what you want on the IT side. But it's digital transformation is first of all a question of business. If your business is not digital, we'll have some trouble, because it's something like trying to do the same things in the same way, but with different tools. You will get same result, probably. So you probably more efficient result, but the same. So if you want to be disruptive, you have to embrace the change, and this is very easy for a startup. I see a startup that start digital, start thinking digital, start thinking the business digital, and every time do some things, of course, have a green field and without any issues. But the matter is about the companies that already are on the market since decades, and it's hard to find the right way for activate this transformation, and maybe that will be also cultural and not only some technical. It's not about technical depth. It's a digital, it's a cultural depth, and it's the other things, because you cannot buy culture. You cannot buy. You can buy a CRM, you can buy an e-commerce, you can buy 1,000 days of a developer that fixes your problem, but you cannot buy culture. And this is the hardest part, on my opinion, for digital transformation.
It makes sense, and I had an opportunity to spend a few years in the consulting space, and I remember even before starting with technology, the thing we try to do is start with a process. How do you work? Who are the people involved in the process, the different teams? And then once you have that all mapped and the challenges around the process and people, then you can start mapping the technology issues, right, tied to it. Because then if you fix the problem in the process and the people involved, then technology is just an enabler how to get there. Is that what you see out there as well?
Sure. I agree with that. Of course, since the beginning, even when you start defining process, the process has to define it in a digital way, of course. But it is quite easy to understand that is a pre-requirement, of course, and then it's never a problem about software. When we start this such kind of project using the workflow you described, usually after you define the process, you start probably with a software selection inside the technical analysis. So if we are in the condition that we have to select a software from a list of software, we have a list of software, so it's not a problem. One of the list will be okay. So it's not the problem to find the software. We have too much software, and so we have to filter the software and find the best one. So we are very lucky, probably. The matter is at the beginning, finding the right process, finding the process that is the right compromise to keep all the situation right, and that make value for the company and can be sustainable and so on. So I think you are right. So is the right process.
Yeah, and even bringing it, I would say, down to a more specific area in the organization, the DevOps, right? A lot of people talk about DevOps, but they see DevOps as a technology rather than a culture and a process. And I see many large organizations failing at or getting frustrated with the DevOps because they're just throwing people at a problem rather than fixing the process on how things are done. Do you see that being a frustration as well there for many organizations?
Sure. I have the same situation in many cases, and it's hard to understand, talking with some probably businessmen or something like that, what is a DevOps in their mind. Most of them identify DevOps with people. So DevOps is a person, but not a person, or or maybe the room with the person inside or the team. But and this is quite strange, because when Patrick Debois started talking about DevOps and coined the terms in 2009, it was more a philosophy or a way of seeing things working together. And now it's something different. It's probably a more pragmatical approach when you have to make DevOps. Who make DevOps? Him. He is DevOps. So it's some simplification, but I love very much the oldest approach when we talked about DevOps as a philosophy. And anyway, there is a point when you have to deploy the application. So you cannot ask to a philosophy to deploy the application, but you have to find the people and tools and process that grant that every single commit will produce a release, and the release will be released, tested, and approved by security, and so on. And so if I had to say what is DevOps nowadays, probably is no more a philosophy. It's something a little bit more of the philosophy, is the conjunction of people, mindset, tool, process, all the process together with a single. Probably the best solution is to have only one platform that let all the people work together and be aware what's happening and so on. So I think it's nowadays that DevOps, and probably NoOps is the same, because I think it's just an evolution or the will to remove any friction or remove any manual activity from the process, because we have to go faster for digital transformation, for keeping budget low, for avoiding human error. So we have to reduce human effort on all the single step of the process.
It makes sense. No, that's awesome conversation. We talked about DevOps and NoOps, open source as a career, and how that drives the digital transformation. And before we close, what's next for you? What are you working on that's interesting? What have you seen out there that is interesting, that piqued your eye and your ears lately? What's next for you?
What's next for me? About DevOps, of course, we will see NoOps as the future for most application, when possible, of course. The cloud will be here in the next year and will be the standard for sure. And about the DevOps in general, will be the trend to bring all the people, bring all the tool in only one platform, some high level of automation that will be able to have everything inside and define a standard that is the same for everything, to avoid the tool segmentation and the fragmentation of the work. In general, another big trend for the development side is the no-code approach. The code approach is very interesting. It's still not mature probably today, but I think also in this case we will find a way for balance the benefits and the limits and the limitation that today are mostly the hardness of keeping custom code. So you have no margin of customization. But I think in the future maybe solve this limitation, and probably will save a lot of work. But we have to say how the cloud platform that give this service will invest on this and how we will find a way to escape from the default solution and write custom code or add custom behaviors to the platform. This is probably the challenge on the development side for the next years.
Yeah, no code and low code. It's an interesting concept. I think I agree with you. It has to mature more, and it's funny because I saw some I think low code tools out there, and people dragging and dropping buttons and things. I was like, that's Visual Basic all over again.
Sure. But I think about this, I believe a lot of the low code and the no code. No code is not possible. Probably low code on the backend side. So for that part, probably will be interesting. The front end part, it depends, because when you work for a big customer and you have to deliver an interface from the user, drag and drop has very limitations. So I don't know if we really could do something on that part. But of course, maybe in the backend part, when you have to save and read data, probably if you think to GraphQL and something like that, probably will be easier to doing something like that. Example, I'm a fan of Pincor. Pincor is a headless, do a lot of things and is also able to be used as headless CMS. So you can just configure your schema, all the entities, relationship, and so on, and the exposed data has GraphQL.
Nice.
So this is very nice, and it saves a lot of work. Of course, it's available on premise, and you can also make some customization. So this is not no code, probably is not low code, but it's something that saves you a lot of time and is sustainable, because if the customer asks you to move a button or change a field name, you can do it with some custom field. So probably we have to looking for some solution like that is low code, but also be able to be customized.
Yeah, makes sense. No, that's awesome. I appreciate your time today, and I look forward to chatting again and seeing how the NoOps and the low code initiatives they progress over the next few months.
Well, it will be great. I will wait for an invitation. It was a pleasure also on my side. It was very interesting to talk about these topics. And sorry if I spoke too much, because I
No,
love
that's
this
awesome.
topic so much. And when I start to talk about it, I cannot stop.
That's great. No, I really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot, Daniel.
Thank you a lot. Bye-bye.